What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Win-Win Effect podcast, presented by WINJECT Studios. I am your host, Chris Ross, and if you're new to us, welcome. Really excited and blessed to have you here for the first time. The outcome that we're after in each episode of this show is to introduce you to as many people as I cross paths with to inspire and help you, our listeners, to manifest anything you want out of life. How I go about achieving this is one heartbeat, one mission, one outcome, that's success. Our featured guest for this week, I have an opportunity to share a conversation that I had with a fourth-generation entrepreneur, my friend Matt Deutschman. He is the Double Take promotional marketing owner, which specializes in custom-branded promotional products for colleges and universities, advertising, marketing agencies, professional services firms, and the finance industry. Matt also has a journalism background, which provides the framework for his unique ability to ask insightful questions and tell his clients' stories. His company's slogan, "Make them look twice," speaks volumes about his results. His employees become brand advocates, clients become referral sources, and recruits become team members. Some of the things to pay very close attention to in today's episode is Matt provides tons, and I mean tons, of entrepreneurial insight, marketing experience, productivity, and work-life balance mission. Last but not least, be sure to check out his first publishing children's book called Double Take Defenders. Before I kick this up a couple notches and dive right in, stand by for a quick message, and I'll see you on the other side.
This podcast is part of the WINJECT Studios network, where podcasters come together to focus on community, collaboration, and collective impact. For more information on how to apply to join the network, go to www.winject.com. That's WINJECT.com. If you're ready to make a difference through podcasting, then we're ready to see you there.
What is up, everybody? As you can tell, I have my main man, Mr. Matt. I'm going to do a little double take. That's my little intro drop of your name of your company, obviously. But welcome to the show, man. I'm really excited to have you here. There's so much to have a conversation about, dissect. And then one thing that I loved about your message and what you're doing right now is that you have adapted well during the COVID times that a lot of people haven't, I guess you would say, had their fingers on a pulse and in knowing what adjustments they needed to make, especially when it comes to their business model and what they're trying to reach. But again, and I'm sure we'll have a conversation in depth about this, but welcome to today's show, my man.
Thank you very much, Chris. Glad to be here.
I'm excited. And you probably could tell for those who have seen videos of Matt that he's growing out his beard. I don't know if he mentioned that he was growing it out just for this show to match my beard, but you look good with a beard, my man, just to say it again.
Yeah, I had standards to live up to.
Right. There's only like one question I typically, I guess, ask people to kind of give a little bit more context behind, because obviously we do intros and things of that nature to promote your businesses and your children's, but there's so much to go into. But for the most part, if someone that didn't really know much about you, and it's kind of hard today with today's marketplace where we live in a consumer world where anyone can just type in someone's name on Google and they'll find more about them in information phase, right, of the era we're living in now. But how would you kind of give a little bit more context on who you are and what you're about, what you do for your companies?
Well, my business is Double Take Promotional Marketing, and what we do promotional products and branded merchandise. So in a nutshell, we put logos on anything. That's kind of the way I like to say it to allow people to understand it easily. But I think what's most important is kind of like the way that we operate and the way that I run my business and the way that I interact with my team and my and our clients and our suppliers. And we really just try to spread light to whoever we come in contact with. That's kind of a guiding principle of our business, and that's something that my employees and we all take to heart with how we interact with our clients, our suppliers, our community, people I network with, and that's really just something I always try to keep in mind, and also how I relate with my employees. I think that the stronger we can be from within, the stronger we will be, going without to those that we come in contact with.
Right. And sometimes when you're making that type of contact with your communities, outsourcing or whatever you're trying to do, it comes from internal in the way that I look at as a CEO, making sure that they're communicating their message all the way down to someone maybe works in a warehouse or whatever they're doing, right? So their first line of defense, I guess you would say, in certain companies, especially right now with the COVID stuff going on, you don't really have a lot of people like walking into a facility and companies because obviously there's no contact and those types of, depending on where you are in the world. One thing I do love about your slogan is like, what is it? Make them look twice. I like that.
It's a two-pronged slogan too. It's everything we do is like double, right? So it's make them look twice. That's our tagline. It's also our URL. But it's two-pronged in that I think the more obvious meaning of make them look twice is that the products that we do for our clients will make the viewers of their brand look twice. So we're helping our clients turn heads. But the less obvious one is that the tagline is also it's a driving force for us internally for how we do what we do. We take it to heart that when we're showing options to our clients, or we're presenting ideas to our clients, we want to make our clients look twice. We want to show something to our clients that they've never seen before. We want to really wow them with our creativity. And so it's not only an outward slogan and tagline, but something that really helps kind of drive us in the way that we do what we do internally.
It drives efficiency within your own staffing, which I do love, because it's all about, this is my philosophy when I'm looking at business. It's like one heartbeat, one mission, one outcome. That's success, but we all have to be aligned to be able to get, I guess you would say, and put ourselves all collectively as a unit, as a company, in the right position to win. And a lot of companies, they don't, depending on, you have directors, and I know that a lot of times pre-COVID, I would have conversations with business owners. They were like, well, I don't really have like a virtual business. I don't have this. I don't have that. Well, for those who took the time to kind of make sure that they have web pages and having where it's a 24/7 business where people can go and say, hey, what is Double Take? What is this? What is, what are some things that I can do right now to make sure that I'm getting out the right message to, my community and the staff and for future buyers. And I love that about your message where you're turning your clients into, referral sources. And you do that through repetition. You're doing that through, customer satisfaction. Then you're also looking at it as in when your own staff, you're looking as brand advocates and really promoting that, because I've learned this over the years of, running staffs and being in leadership. The more that you're putting it back onto them and making them feel more excited about creating an environment for them to feel safe and excited about what they do for a living. Well, that energy is infectious. It's easy to do when the morale's high. And the reason why I framed it the way that I am, because I'm going to ask you a question. How much do you put, and it seems like you put a lot of thought into everything you do, and I love that about you. How much thought do you put into like maybe some competitions you roll out with your staff? Is it, how do you get the morale and keep the morale so high within your companies now?
It's a really interesting question. I mean, so first off, just to touch on something that you said about turning clients into referral sources and turning employees into brand advocates. That's something that we do for our clients, but it's another thing that like we do what our clients do. We practice what we preach.
Okay.
We take it to heart what we're advocating for our clients, and through promotional products, we help our clients effectively brand themselves and market themselves so that they're staying top of mind with their clients, turning those clients into referral sources, making their employees feel well appreciated and like they're part of a team unit, so that they are truly brand advocates into the marketplace, and not just, hey, this is where I work, but hey, come check out where I work. This is a really cool place to be. So we help our clients do that, But again, we practice what we preach. And so to go to your question of, how we keep morale, how I keep morale high, how I keep my team engaged. We've operated as a remote team for several years. Yes. So that was one, fortunate thing that came of COVID, or one thing that we were well prepared for, that we didn't have to completely, adapt our entire way of operating. We had already operated as a remote team, and I already had my home office. But something that we do that has kind of evolved and strengthened through COVID is we have Monday and Friday team meetings. And on Mondays, each of us puts forth a goal that we're looking to accomplish that week, among other parts of our report. But the goal is a key. And then on Fridays, we all report back on what our progress was in accomplishing that goal. So we're able to hold ourselves accountable, hold one another accountable. And then you'll love this, with the win-win effect. We all share a win from that week on Friday. Love it. Something that we like, and because we want to always wrap up the week on a positive note. So and reflecting on what went right, what went well that week. So we all share a win that happened during that week, and then we all express something that we're grateful for that.
That's powerful. That's so powerful.
Yeah, and that's something, you wouldn't believe the conversations we've had as a result of that. It could be something that, about our families. It could be business related. It could be just something, kind of more ethereal about the world in general. But it's really brought us together as a very tight-knit unit, just kind of sharing those things and getting to know one another on a more personal level. It's something that was born out of the pandemic, but that's another positive that has really come out of it for us to strengthen our team from within.
No, I love what you said in a multitude of reasons. It seems to me, just from the outside looking in, and me kind of prepping myself for this interview, I prep myself different for, I'm not going to say different, but I look at different aspects of opportunity to be able to shine a light on the things you do extremely well in your industry, and how you're able to separate yourself from your maybe potentially competition. It seems for me, outside looking in, you don't really look at competition as competition. You look at it as more of community and opportunity for you to grow and learn more. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. My business is highly commoditized and price driven. And when I meet people for the first time, a lot of people will say to me, "Oh, that's a very competitive business that you're in." And I kind of chuckle when people say that, because it's like, well, yeah, doesn't that mean that there's a lot of value for what we provide if there's a lot of people doing it? So competition is a good thing. I'm not afraid of competition. And I think that in a lot of ways, at least for me, the way I approach competition, I don't find myself in direct competition with another competing company very frequently. I don't. That happens very rarely, that we're submitting a bid and there's one other company competing with a competitive bid and we just have to hope we get it. Like that's not a typical scenario for us. For me, the competition is more of like how we set ourselves apart from the expectation that clients might have, or from the perception that clients might have of our industry, which quite frankly is not always so positive. And taking that, I want all of my competitors to excel and to succeed, because that only helps elevate the perception of our industry as a whole. So yeah, I don't find myself in a lot of direct competition, but I also don't really I don't approach business from that standpoint.
It's abundance mentality. It's that mentality that you have, and that's how you're able to make the proper adjustments, even during those times where I guess maybe I wouldn't really say green entrepreneurs or CEOs or people appointed into a leadership position, they sometimes shy away from it. Maybe they'll point fingers, or they'll say, "Oh, this person doing this, and we do better than this." I've been around a lot of board meetings where you would have a leader or a person making a pitch for a bid, and they would poke holes at the competitor. And I instantly get pushed away from that type of approach, because that's not really, I guess you say, really embracing change and being adaptable to change. Because if you're stuck on someone else, then you're not going to really excel expectations and exceed expectations in the marketplace with your own customers right now and turning them into a lifelong client. And that's what I love about your message. And then just to shine a light on this, to kind of give everyone a little bit more context on who you are and what you're about. I mean, you're a fourth generation entrepreneur. So, and you're looking back from, what was it, 1935, if I read correctly, with your great grandfather and your grandfather starting a separate company. When I think it was in New York, correct?
Correct. Yeah, I'm born and raised in New York, and my great grandfather Paul and my grandfather Maynard started the Paul May Company in 1935.
Right, and then your dad took over, and your dad did it for 30 years, and you worked for your dad, I think, for a year, and then you went and you started your own company in 2010. Right. So you're 10 years in, and the reason why I said it this way, because I wanted to give the listeners a little bit more behind how you came about doing what you're doing right now. But from me doing my research, it seems to me that the major influence in your life wasn't on that side. It was your mom. From me kind of outside looking in, because I think she was a 30-year-old teacher, and, was very fluent in different languages. So that very diverse. And I love that. And I think that's where you got your work ethic from. If I've read everything correctly and I've read between the lines.
You did your research. Yeah. I would say it's a good mix of influence from both my parents of who I am. And I think that's a positive thing. I definitely, my dad being in business, he never pushed me to go into this business, this industry, and never, but he exposed me to it. And when I worked for him, that was more of, I started working with my dad more by happenstance than by anything else. And that became a pivotal, experience in my life that drove me into this industry, and then to starting my own company in this industry. And I learned a lot from my dad about, running a business, and how he would, just sitting in an office next to him and hearing how he would talk to clients, and hearing how he would talk to suppliers of his, and and then when I started my company, my dad and I would have daily conversations.
Good. Love
it. Just talking business, picking his brain, just telling him about challenges I was having. And so he was a huge, just source of knowledge and mentorship for me when I was first getting started. And then my mom, as a teacher, what I really always respected about my mom is that in her 30+ year teaching career, every year she would always learn new teaching methods and new types of lessons, and she would always be reinventing herself. She never she never mailed it in. She never just kind of repeated the same thing that she had done in the past, out of taking the easy road or defaulting to that. She really just always put her students first, and did whatever was going to be in their best interest for her to be the best version of herself, the best teacher possible for her students. And I just always really respected that mentality towards her profession, and the work ethic that went into that, to prioritize.
It takes a lot. It takes an extreme amount of effort. It takes an extreme amount of effort to put that extra piece in, to ensure that you're not just doing it for your own benefit and excelling in your own career. You're trying to excel with your clientele or excel with their own students. And it's like, hey, what do they need me to do? Yes, here's the minimum requirements, as in from the education board or whatever, right, our bosses. But these are minimum requirements when it comes to curriculum and making sure that I'm teaching the students and they're excelling and they're making good grades and they're passing and reviewing. But what can I do extra to make sure that I'm going to make an everlasting impact with them? And it sounds like she did that.
Yeah, and my mom, she was a foreign language teacher.
Yes.
So she is fluent in Spanish and nearly fluent, I'd say, in Japanese. She taught Spanish and Japanese for many years in her school, and then close to her retirement, I'd say 2 or 3 years before she retired, she got her schedule one day in August, and school starts in September, and she looks at her schedule, and she's teaching an Italian class. And she said, I don't know Italian, but she went out and she learned Italian well enough in a
That's crazy. I did read
to be able to teach Italian to sixth graders, and that's, in a lot of ways, that's how I felt last year, where it's like, okay, great, I'm about to celebrate 10 years in business. I've been doing this, in a groove. We know what we're doing. What do you mean COVID hit? What do you mean we have to reinvent everything that we do and start doing things completely different?
Right.
It's the same kind of a shock to the system, but you just have to kind of take it in stride and say, well, am I gonna close up shop, or am I gonna keep going and find a new way? So
right, just gotta adapt and overcome. It's like what needs to be done. There's what everyone else is doing, but what needs to be done. Like, it doesn't matter to me. Like, the adjustments that I've made in this, I'm just a blessed individual. And you're talking about exposure with your father. Like, I was exposed to business later, I guess you would say, in my career and later in life, when I started rubbing elbows with, some of the, VPs of marketing and missions, and me being involved in education. I started rubbing elbows with the major investors and people investing into that, trade school. Then I started being a sponge. And you mentioned sitting in an office and listening to your dad, how he handled his daily operations and maybe some of the contractors and some of his suppliers and whatnot. You learn so much just being exposed. If you're, I guess you would say, aware enough and present enough to pay attention to the ins and outs on what you should do and what you shouldn't do. And I've learned more, to be honest with you, Matt, about what not to do in certain situations that I would learn from someone doing something the right way. And so how can I take it to another level? You know what I mean? So, how many, it's like, I think I read somewhere also, during that 1 year you were working with your father, he was in the process of selling the business. And that's was the conversation ever presented to you, you should take this over? Or is it they were like, I don't really want to do this because I'm not lined with it and I want to start my own and blazing your own path? I know it's kind of a loaded question, but I'm just more curious.
Yeah. So, I guess where it really began was, you mentioned journalism early on. That was that was my passion. That's what I studied in college and wanted to get into journalism. And so that was my dad was so supportive of that path for me. And so it was never really, a lot of people, they go to college and they don't know what they want to do. They're undecided major or whatever. I was one of the people who was locked in. I know exactly what I want to do. And still I'm not working in that field. So it goes to show you, it doesn't matter one way or another, really. But, so my dad was just very supportive of me going in that path. And through my journalism education, ironically, I kind of soured on the journalism industry and worked in it in various internships and freelance positions, and then ultimately decided to go a different path. And it was in 2008 that my dad he had just moved his factory and was in the process of kind of transitioning that and potentially selling his company. So, and that's when I started working for him, just kind of helping him in the office. I needed something more stable at the time. So it was that's why it was kind of by happenstance. And I was in no position at that time from an industry knowledge standpoint, from a business management knowledge experience standpoint, or certainly financial, to purchase the business from him or to take it on from him. And so, and he was on his way towards selling the company. So it was never really anything that came up in discussion at the time, or, but not that I wasn't interested or wouldn't have been interested or anything. It just wasn't really on the radar at the time. I started, that's how I got my start on the distributorship side of this industry. While I was working for my dad on the supplier side, I started working part-time for someone else as an independent contractor doing sales. And so when my dad sold his company, I got more involved with that, doing sales, and really grew to love it. And that's where I got my inspiration to start my own company.
Love it. And that's where I wanted to make sure that I touched on, because I was just more curious for my own sanity, I guess you would say, because it's something that jumped out to me. I was like, I wonder if that conversation happened, and it's now it makes a lot more sense that you didn't really entertain it. And one thing I will shine a light on for the listeners that maybe didn't catch this, he knew right then he wasn't ready, for that, because one, industry, and then knowledge, and then also, of course, you're looking at the financial side, and you have to, I guess it's something you don't think about. You just have to feel with inside of your gut, your intuition, and being alone in your own thoughts, understanding I don't think I'm ready for it just yet, because you would have ended up failing. When you made that shift, right, and you started your own in 2010, and you've been in the industry, I mean, 10 years, man, congratulations, man. There's not a lot of companies that stick around for even past a year or 3 years. I mean, you can look at the numbers, right? So, but one thing I did learn about your story and your message, especially to companies, that the first 5 years you celebrate, I think you went to a minor league ball club and celebrate your 5-year tenure, right? So then you went, that was right around the time you had your first child, and that made a change for you, correct?
Yeah, that was a big mindset shift, and shift towards my view of work-life balance. And for how we structure the company, for sure.
What jumped out to you? Was it your wife that kind of mentioned some things about, hey, we need to make sure that we're spending a lot more quality time and building a family rather than you just building a company and then building a family on the back end of that? Or was it something you just felt that you needed to do and make the proper adjustments when aligning all those aspects of life, making sure you're all like speaking one language?
It was, so my wife and I got married in 2015, and we were on our honeymoon in May into June of 2015. And we had an amazing time on our honeymoon. But at the time, I was the only person within my company. I was wearing all the hats, doing everything. And I was working several hours every day, even on my honeymoon. And we were in Croatia. And I'm trying to calculate the time difference between Croatia and New York, where my clients are, and where my suppliers are. And it's like, it was a mess. And, I really, came to the realization of, what's the point of owning my own business if I'm so beholden to it that I can't even take.
You just created another job for yourself. Right. I did the same. I did the same thing in the beginning. I was wearing all these hats, bro. I was wearing all of them. And I was like, well, shit. Like, all I did was just create another job for myself. I really didn't have a business. I mean, it's, when you're looking at business,
it was okay at the time.
Right. Yeah, of course. But you got to make the proper adjustments. Right. Go ahead, please.
Right. And that's how I look at it, is that I created a job for myself at first. Which at the time, I'm proud of that. It was 2010, which we look back now with the benefit of 11 years hindsight, that 2010 economy was rebounding and everything. But at the time that I started my company, everyone wanted to talk about was how bad the economy was and how and I made the decision right then. I am never going to let an external factor impact my mindset or how I go about my business. I'm never going to let anyone else's view of the economy being poor or something that I can't control impact how I operate. That's how I took that mindset, which I dusted off that mindset for COVID when it came up last year. Like, okay, this is an external factor. We can't control it. We're going to just have to go ahead. But so it was when I first started. Yes, I was doing everything and I was working long hours, and in a lot of ways I was setting up a foundation. But it was really that honeymoon experience that was the eye opener for me. And it wasn't long after our honeymoon that we found out we were expecting our first child. And so I made it my mission. I had a hard deadline of, when my baby was going to be born. That's my deadline. I want to shift the way that we do business such that I can expand this beyond just myself, hire people, and take what we do well. And rather than that just being what, Matt Deutschman does well, and what people like about doing business with Matt Deutschman, but they take that and make that the double take way of doing business. And then we can expand more based on, that foundation of the double take, operating system.
Let's see if I can help you. Let's see if I can help the listeners understand how important this is when it pertains to you really taking your business to the next level. I see a lot, especially right now in the marketplace. I don't care what industry you're in. And if you're an entrepreneur and you're wearing a couple different types of hats, and you can easily fall into the victim mentality of everybody else blaming everything on COVID. Just like in 2010, when the economy is trying to recover and get better, they'll point and say, "Well, my business failed. That's why I can't do it." Right? I don't need, these T-shirts or these Yeti cups with my emblem on it. I don't need this stuff. But you do. You know what I mean? It's an essential part of your business. You have to make sure that your clients are to turn them into raving fans for you. And that's hard because it's easy, especially right now in 2021, people are going, well, COVID did this and I lost my business because of this and I lost this. But if they had, I guess you would say, some of that conditioning and that foundation, it sounds like you did, then you were able to just make the proper adjustments and move because you've been there before. Like, all right, well, this is what I have to do. But what are some advice would you give an entrepreneur that is wearing a couple different hats and they're looking to take their business to the next level to create more time for them to be a little bit more of a visionary in their business so that way they can make the proper adjustments, seeing things a little bit later in the road?
Yeah, that's a big question. There's a lot there. And I think, and first of all, what's the first step for you? I'll make it easy because it is a loaded question. Because if someone asked me that question, me hearing myself frame it that way, I'd be like, well, I don't really know where to start because that's a lot of different ways you can go. But what would be the first, I guess you would say, initial step for an entrepreneur in that situation? Yeah, and first of all, I just want to say that like none of what I've said, and I'm sure none of this conversation is to belittle someone who legitimately their business was decimated by COVID beyond their control.
Right.
I mean, there's some industries that there's just no way that you can rebound. And we were very fortunate that even in my industry, which is very event driven and very hands-on, in-person driven, we were less dependent on like trade show types of projects and things like that than a lot of other companies, even in my industry. So we were a little bit more insulated from the impact. But I would say in terms of just the what to do to improve work-life balance and scale a company beyond yourself as an entrepreneur, something that was huge for me was just relinquishing control. And so we talked about it. What's interesting, I think, is that I've talked about not letting external factors control my mindset, but I am a control freak. I am a perfectionist, someone who needs to be in control of everything. So what was a big evolution for me at the time that I first hired my first employee was kind of relinquishing some control and understanding that even if someone does something 80% of the way I would do it, or if it takes them 1.2 times the amount of time that it would take me to do something, that's still better than me taking my time towards that. I
struggle with that as well.
100%. So it's recognizing like some of the non-negotiables, right? So you if you're going to do this task instead of me, you must do it to this standard. You must do it in this way. Like there are certain things that have to happen in order, and that's again the double take way, right? This is the way that we operate. So you must adhere to these parameters, but other things I want to give my members of my team the creative freedom to be themselves and leave their imprint on the role. And and there are many things that they do better than I would have ever thought. And
I love that.
So I think part of it is recognizing what you do well and also what you don't do so well, and maybe what you don't enjoy doing so much,
right?
And empowering other people to step into those areas.
And they're not going to feel safe if they're feeling from the leader at that time where they're a control freak and they don't want to mess it up. Like I struggle with that as well. I'm a control freak. I mean, most entrepreneurs are, but I live and die by a 70% rule. If it's done up to 70% of my expectations, then we get it out there and I'm okay with that. That other 30%, that's me. That's what my creative spin. But sometimes their creative spin and the other 30% right there, that might take the results to another level that I wouldn't even be able to accomplish. And you have to be able to have and create the environment for them to feel it's okay to maybe potentially take it to another level, or you coming to you with different ideas. That's what a team is all about in a corporation. My team now, they'll come to me with ideas. 5 years ago, they didn't come to me with a lot of ideas. It was like, Chris, what do we do? Like, what do we do? Like, what do we need to do? Like, so that's where I think that first step would be, creating the environment and then looking at what you're trying to accomplish and then building those non-negotiables there as a barrier. It's like, this is what you have to, this is a must, and here's why that's a must. And because I'm trying to prevent this XYZ from happening, and if this happens, then this goes down, and then boom, it's over. So that's why. And that's why it's always, it's important to explain why it's done up to this standard. And there's non-negotiable. You have to meet these standards. So like, what are some of those types of standards for you when it pertains to, customer satisfaction, and also when it goes to with your clients as in customer satisfaction?
So in terms of some of this,
overall,
sausage is made. Yeah.
Yeah.
Overall, it's always, the overarching principle that we operate by is that we do what is right in all situations. We live and we work under the confines of integrity. That's doing what is right in all situations. That doesn't always mean that the customer is always right, because sometimes the customer is asking something that's unreasonable, or something that I would have to put an employee in an unreasonable situation, or we would have to ask something unreasonable of a supplier. So it's doing what is right, but coming from that is the clear communication, because it's okay to explain to a customer or to a client that something is unreasonable, but it's all about how it's communicated and how we kind of present the alternative option, the backup plan, the solution to the problem, right? So that's, maybe it's a little vague.
No, I'm aligned. I'm aligned to that, because here's the reason how he's able to do that, ladies and gentlemen, that he's not scared of competition coming in and outbidding him or doing something or exceeding. He's okay with that. When he's explaining that to his potential customer or buyer at times, like, here's what we can do. And if you're asking us for do this, that's going to change the conversation. Is it something we're able to do? Or you have to be upfront with that with your buyers or in your customers. Like, this is not feasible. We can't make this happen because of XYZ. If you're looking to do this in the marketplace, and maybe if you find someone, let me know, because I don't see anyone doing it up to that expectation of what we're able to roll out and make sure that we're going to execute with you. I mean, I think that comes from a lot of, I wouldn't say just experience, but that comes from a lot of just being extremely confident in your own products and services and goods, from my understanding.
Yeah, and a lot of it comes with experience. And and look, we're not perfect at it. But it's something that we have to hold ourselves to. That we really want to. Always our goal is to have clear and transparent communication with our clients. We'd rather over-explain something so that they deeply understand why something can't happen or what goes into it on our end. We're in an interesting industry where people don't always understand how much goes into getting a product made, getting a logo put on a product, and then having it shipped and distributed. And like, there's a lot that goes into it. And so a lot of our business process is logistics management of everything that goes on. And the client sometimes they see the finished product, which is an item that has their logo printed on it. But without understanding all that goes into it, we want to really make sure that we're clearly communicating everything that has to occur, so that we understand the limitations, and so that our clients can have reasonable expectations.
That's how you're able to you're creating I guess you would say, you're putting your clients in a position with enough information to be able to sell your business for you that way through it. And I think it goes back to your philosophy about the referral source and looking at your clientele that way, because you're explaining how much work goes into your finished product. They don't just look at their logo. Okay, great. Yeah, double take. And this is what we do. Like, how did you get your logo on your hat? Or I really like the rollouts and the Yetis, or I really like even just a good shift with this and a good segue. You made the proper adjustments with your COVID stuff and your mask. You're giving away masks, and you're I guess in your a lot of information you're doing to educational programs, you're creating, I guess you would say, an environment for them to say, okay, yeah, you can have your PPE, right? You can have all this protection, but you want to make sure you're going to have your logos on it, correct? So that's a huge way for you to continue to keep selling your business, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's it's funny. I giggle when you say mask, because it's like a year ago at this time that, you know,
like, what the hell's a mask? That's so like true, man.
But yeah, I mean, something that sticks out to me just from what you just said is brand standards. Also, that like we're a marketing partner for our clients beyond just the products that we're you know, producing and putting their branding on. We work with a lot of colleges and universities, and we become, in a lot of ways, just as knowledgeable of their brand standards, and in some times more knowledgeable of their brand standards than various departments in the college or university. And that's not a knock on the people that we work with or a knock on the department at all, because a lot of the time their focus in managing their department is not on upholding the brand of the school or on, you know, marketing collateral and that sort of thing. They're focused on what they're doing. And you know, we have to make sure that when we're producing a project for a college, that, you know, all departments are using the logo and the branding guidelines in a way that adheres with, you know, with the brand standards that they've set forth. So then it's important for us to know what those standards are and you know, walk our clients through it and help them.
Sometimes they're not going to be, I guess you would say, aware on how essential it is for their, I guess, admission staff and the people that are trying to recruit into their university or their school, their education program. And the reason why I'm telling you this, and I'm sharing this with the listeners as well, I come from the trade school industry in education. So when I was, it feels like forever ago, it feels like a lifetime ago, when I was an admissions rep and I was calling prospective students on the phone, and my sole purpose was to, I guess you would say, provide them enough information and need and want and interest in what they needed to do to come in for, I guess, a tour of the school and the campus, to go through the product knowledge and figuring out what program might be in the best interest for them short-term and long-term. So when I invite them into a campus, this is something that when I was doing education consulting for, and I would go into trade schools and say, Chris, how can we make sure that we're exceeding expectations and start ratios and pass and review accreditations? I'm like, well, it all starts with how you look. And if you're giving away slicks and there's no branding on it, and the logo doesn't look the same on your, I guess, presentation with your prospective student, then that's something that's a huge disconnect. So what happens is a student might come in with their parents because they have to sign, right? They're using a FAFSA or whatever that might be. Well, the father or the mom will come in and they realize that these things that they're aware of, not the student, these things they're aware of, and that pushes them all to saying, I'm not going to give you money to go to school and sign my name on this because you're an adult now in a trade school. We're not doing this. You just lost a potential enrollment right off the bat, just because of how the brand isn't really up to the expectations of your I guess you would say, clientele and students.
Sure, it's powerful.
It's
powerful.
I mean, is that something that you try to communicate with your education, I guess, contracts and the university? Sometimes when you're dealing with the university, they understand that. But when you're dealing with I wouldn't say lower end, and I don't want to try to offend an education program, because if you're in education, I'm all with you. So, because I believe in education, but like, well, how wide of a range? Let me ask this question. How wide of a range is your education businesses and contracts that you do have? Is it coming, do you have trade schools, or walk me through that?
Our specialty really is at the higher education level. So
okay, got it.
But even within those colleges and universities, it runs the gamut what department we're working with. And so the goal of the project that we're working on may be vastly different. I mean, if we're working with an admissions department or a marketing department, they do understand the impact of their brand and the importance of of making that first impression on the new student when they come in. Orientation departments, like they absolutely understand the importance of all that. But but a financial aid department or other, not to knock financial aid or anything, but just other departments may not always understand how important it is that the brand is aligned with the message, and that it's the overall experience that the student is having throughout their life cycle with the college and then beyond as an alumnus. It all has to be aligned, and it all has to be, it has to flow from that first time they even hear about the school before applying, all the way through the application process, their career as a student, and then their lifetime involvement as an alumnus, and for the school's best interest as a donor. I mean, it all has to be aligned, and that's why every touch point that the student has with a different administrative department throughout their career at the school, that's an opportunity for the school to be making an impression and just adding to that positive perception that the student has of their experience with the college.
And it makes it easier when you have a clear and concise branding message and a mission statement. If you don't, then it's a huge disconnect. And yes, it is a huge opportunity to make sure you're laying that foundation and building on that foundation for them to be able to go to in their community and say, my experience with this XYZ company or this XYZ educational program was by far probably one of the best experiences I've ever come in contact with. And it'd be easier, and they're a little bit more impressionable and I guess open to maybe having some of their family members or friends in their own community and their connections of recommending that. I can't tell you how vital that is. And it speaks volumes. And that's what I love about you even have a slogan. And I even said this to a company once. And this is a good name company. I was like, what's your slogan? Oh, that just changed. I said, well, how long you been changing it? They said 6 months. And I'm like, well, that's why I'm here, because you're in the red. Now you don't have your reps, or you don't have your, I guess, secretaries or your first line of defense speaking that one heartbeat, one mission, one outcome, or yours, make them look twice. I mean, it needs to be ingrained with everyone on your staff. I don't care if you're virtual or if you're campus, but I don't care. It needs to be ingrained with the message. I love this, man. So there's I know that we covered a lot, and I want to be conscious of the time as well. And I know that we have a hard stop in a certain amount of time, because you're, just as much as everybody else in this world, time is the only non-renewable resource in life. So we don't ever get that shit back. But like, can you share with some of the listeners to learn more about you, your companies? Because we're going to put a lot of stuff in the show notes, and producers, they'll put it all there. But like, what are some things right now you're currently working on to make sure that you're really going to exceed expectations in 2021?
You mean like types of client projects that we're working on, or
correct.
Internal within the business?
I mean, just like, what kind of projects are you currently working on right now before everyone else, I guess you would say, exposed to some of the things you have in the works in the pipeline? Yeah.
Well, with a lot of our clients, because we're still in this pandemic climate, a lot of our corporate clients are doing a lot to raise morale and to build community amongst their employees, their teams. So we're working on several projects with clients of ours to send meaningful gifts to their staff to keep morale high. We did a lot of that during the holidays just recently, but even now in Q1, we're doing a lot more of that. We have a couple programs that we're working with clients to send out something for all their staff birthdays.
Right. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So whether it's sending something individually on the birth dates of the employees, or doing it month by month, where all the January birthdays get something sent out, and then all the February birthdays and so forth. With our higher ed, higher education clients, now is a time where it's kind of a topsy-turvy time still for them, because here we are. I don't know when this will air, but this is January 19th, and we've got a lot of colleges that are still on extended winter break. Some that are coming back in a hybrid scenario. Some that are going to be virtual, and so just reaching students is as important as ever, and building that community on campus. And commencement's going to be before we know it. So we're working with a couple of colleges already on planning their virtual commencement that they're going to have, and sending something really meaningful as a really cool package that can serve as an invitation package to their graduating seniors, so that they get really jazzed about the event, and then it's not just another boring Zoom webinar kind of thing.
Right.
Really know that it's a special time, and a lot of our college clients, really feel for them because we have a number of college clients that have a substantial amount of first generation college students.
Mm-hmm.
So if you think about that, from the impact that has on that student's family for generations to come,
Mm-hmm.
and the pride that their elders in their family have with that student graduating college for the first time in their history of their family, it's really incumbent upon the college to make sure that graduation is a special event, and
that's a really good point. That's a really good point, because you always remember when you graduate, and I mean, just think about, like, so I don't know, I can go back to my memory and just like pull out a memory and something very specific from that memory, and be able to share the excitement and the way that I felt during that time. And you being a little bit more conscious of the first generation of someone going to graduate, college, it's a big deal, man. I mean, how open would they be to be able to have their children go through what they went through to get, to the end result? Like, well, I don't remember. It was like I watched a video on YouTube. I mean, there was no personal touch to it for them, So I think that's an important piece. I mean, are you presenting that to some of the, the higher eds or education, contracts that you have, or is it maybe you learned it for some of them and some picking it out? Okay, hey, Matt, this is our message. How can we take it to the next level? Is it more of that kind of conversation?
Yeah, it's I've been very impressed by a lot of our clients to see the high quality of virtual they've been putting on, live entertainment components, and just really, and great guest speakers. So they've done a great job by and large of, honoring the specialness of the event and putting together a nice virtual event. And so what we're doing is we're trying to we're supplementing that with something direct mail. So one college last year, we mailed every graduating senior a T-shirt, and the branding on the T-shirt was to mimic what the graduation gown looked like. And we also supplemented that with a swag package of some other items that would help them as they're going into their career, and just some like pride, school pride kinds of items. So that's something that we're working with the colleges to just enhance the impact that they're making with the commencement.
I love that everything that you're about, it comes from your upbringing and whatnot, and belief in the education and why it's so important. Even more so, I think, is what you have the website is a Double Take Defenders. That's what the COVID protection PP stuff. That's where they can find that website. The Double Take Defenders.
Yeah, our normal website, makethemlooktwice.com. But then, Double Take Defenders is our build your own PPE kit.
I love that.
Tool.
Yeah. That's the name. Isn't that the name? You did write a children's book as well. I don't want to forget that piece, because that is important. Right.
Yeah.
You have to send it to me. You have to send it to me and give it to my daughter for sure. But send me a copy, man. But you have what is that book? I guess you can kind of do a quick little overview. Like, what is that book all about, and why'd you do it?
So I have two kids. I have a 4, almost 5-year-old, and a 2, almost 3-year-old. And the book is called "When You Hear the Thunder Rumble." When it's a thunderstorm and when it's raining and thundering outside, and my kids would get scared, I would tell them, don't worry, it's just God playing the drums. And that took on kind of a life of its own. And my son especially is really into music. He loves playing the drums and playing all his toy instruments and everything like that. And I just always love reading to my kids. So came up with this little story about it's ironically it's a nice COVID lockdown book too, because it's all about goofy activities that you can do indoors when it's raining outside. But my kids love the illustrations. I teamed up with a really amazing illustrator, and I get so much joy from reading the book with my own kids. That was the goal, was to get the book published so that I have something to read with my kids that I created, and everything else, any copies we sell, that's all gravy. It's been a lot of fun.
And on top of that is a lot of quality time when you're I guess reading a story and you're doing something different, because obviously I mean, you mentioned in a couple different ways and throughout this interview, and thank you so much for all the information you did share. I mean, it was vital information. I know I've learned more about you just from this interview, but when you're looking at all the things you've done, there's a compound effect. You've been successful on all these different things, and that all stems back from your own mindset in a way that, and I guess your core beliefs and what you're all about as a human being. And it speaks volumes for who you are as a person, and that's why all the success you've had. So I want you to kind of also, even with myself, when I invite someone to come on a show, that means I have a genuine interest in that person. I feel that could be a great message for, my listeners. Because overall, it's my moral obligation to them to have the right people here. I mean, I can easily message 100 businesses and be like, hey, give me 50 guests. I don't want to do that. I want to go from, my connections and my referrals. And it's all referral based when I bring people on the show. So from the reason why I'm telling you this, I want you to look at me as a person. Like, if there's anything that I can do for you to ever return the favor, please let me know.
Thank you very much. And thank you for the kind words and for the conversation. It's been a lot of fun. I really enjoyed being on with you today.
To kind of finish up, wrap up, and and I've enjoyed this conversation as well. Probably the listeners can tell. Anywhere, I know, of course, my staff will put all this information in the bios and in the posts and whatnot. But like, where can they find more about you pretty quickly, other than just going to makeemlooktwice.com and then the doubletakedefenders.com? Correct. Those are the two main websites.
Yeah, those are the two main websites, and I'm also I'm on LinkedIn. Not a lot of Matt Deutschman
right
on there, so easy to find.
Okay, cool. But yeah, guys, if you got any questions, comments, concerns, submitting it. I have a lot of like Raven fan listeners, and I appreciate every single last one of them. And they always submit questions, and I'll make sure that my team, communicates that over, and if not from me directly. But I'm pretty sure there's a lot of questions. But other than that, man, I appreciate you. I appreciate your message. God bless you. You and your family. Just be safe out there. Don't do anything I would do, and make sure you wash your hands and stuff. But I thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it, Matt.
My pleasure. It's really been a pleasure. God bless you too. Thanks, Chris.
All right, take